Madam President, I rise today to talk about this New START treaty, and I have some very serious concerns about it. I appreciate the work that's been done by my colleagues. This is an incredibly serious issue. I think the motives, don't question anybody's motives, but I do think that there are some serious flaws that lie not only within the four corners of the treaty text, but also speak to the manner in which this administration has dealt with Russia. This policy of Russian reset has meant that the United States is making major concessions, while our Russian counterparts give up virtually nothing. Further, I have serious reservations about the manner in which the Senate is considering this treaty. This body, the United States Senate, is supposed to be the most deliberative body in the world. It is supposed to be a chamber that respects the rights of the minority. Senators are supposed to be able and afforded the right of unlimited debate and the right to have their amendments considered. Rushing a treaty of this magnitude through a lame duck session is not what the founders had in mind when they gave this body the power of advice and consent in these serious matters. The American people sent a clear message in November, to concentrate on jobs, taxes, and the economy. While I do not think that this lame duck is the time to debate this very important treaty, I do plan on offering multiple amendments to address this treaty's flaws, as well as the resolution of ratification. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle will also offer amendments with topics ranging from how this treaty restrains our missile defense capabilities, to ceding the Senate's advice and consent role to the flawed bilateral consultative commission. For example, there needs to be an amendment which addresses the verification regime in this treaty, or lack thereof. Further, it is astounding to me that tactical nuclear weapons were left out of this treaty, considering that Russia has approximately a 10-to-1 advantage on this. Additionally, we need to consider how the rail mobile ICBMs are counted or aren't counted, and our Russian policy in a much broader sense. As the Senate moves forward in examining the intended consequences of this treaty, we also need to pay very careful attention to those consequences that are unintended, because that is where the danger truly lies. In order to properly examine these, the administration needs to provide the Senate with the full negotiating record, which it has yet to do. Only upon examination of this record can we accurately determine how Russia views this accord to ensure that their understanding is the same as ours. On the topic of missile defense, this is clearly a case of the administration wanting to have its cake and eat it too. There should be zero, let me emphasize that, zero mention of missile defense within 100 miles of this treaty. And yet there it is, right in the preamble to the New START, which clearly recognizes an interrelationship between offensive nuclear weapons and missile defense. I believe this is simply unacceptable. Further, if you examine Article 5, Paragraph 3 of the New START, missile defense is again referenced plain as day in a provision prohibiting the United States from converting ICBMs or sea-based launchers for missile defense purposes. The administration counters that the United States has no plans for such a conversion. But where is the wisdom in removing such an option from our toolkit for the whole life of the treaty? Russia must understand that we will not limit our options for national defense based on current plans, ideas, or technology. Should a breakthrough occur in missile defense technology or launcher development, we cannot have already ruled out pursuing new courses of action. In their attempts to persuade Republicans to support this, proponents of this treaty have attempted to invoke the name of Ronald Reagan. Let us remember that over two decades ago, President Reagan returned from Iceland and made the following statement: "While both sides seek reduction in the number of nuclear missiles and warheads threatening the world, the Soviet Union insisted that we sign an agreement that would deny me and future presidents for 10 years the right to develop, test, and deploy a defense against nuclear missiles for the people of the free world. This we could not and would not do, he said. I think this clearly states in his own words where Ronald Reagan would be on this New START treaty. Another especially troublesome facet of the New START is that it would establish a bilateral consultative commission with the authority to agree upon additional measures to increase the effectiveness of the treaty. This seems like a broad and vague purview for a commission, and I'm unclear why the Senate would delegate its advice and consent responsibilities to a commission. This leads me to ask a question. Since missile defense has fallen under the purview of this treaty, wouldn't it be logical that this commission could make decisions as to what we can and cannot do with our missile defense assets? We must make it very clear that this commission, the BCC, cannot have the authority to further handicap our national defense, as it could otherwise do under this treaty without further scrutiny of the Senate. I hope that we agree as a body to insist that the workings of the BCC are completely visible and accessible to the Senate, and that we explicitly make these changes to the treaty itself, not just the resolution of ratification. And as we move forward in examining this treaty, I'd like to point out that a colleague of mine will be sorely missed. The senior senator from Missouri, Kit Vaughn, as vice chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, is the foremost expert in the Senate and likely in all of Congress on matters of intelligence. At least that's my opinion. Now I want to quote from my good friend. The Select Committee on Intelligence has been looking at this issue closely over the past several months. As the vice chairman of this committee, I have reviewed the key intelligence on our ability to monitor this treaty and heard from intelligence professionals. There is no doubt in my mind that the United States cannot reliably verify the treaty's 1,550 limit on deployed warheads. The administration claims that New START is indispensable to reap the reset benefits with Russia. It is fatally flawed. If a fatally flawed arms control agreement is the price of admission to the reset game, our nation is better off if we sit this one out. End of quote. I could not agree more with my friend. It is naively optimistic to assume that a world with fewer nuclear weapons is the same thing as a safer world. Our security has long depended on a strong and flexible deterrent. New threats are constantly emerging from every corner of this globe. And this was recently demonstrated by Iran's resistance to denuclearization and North Korea's increasingly violent saber-rattling. The United States must be able to rapidly adapt and respond to new threats to our security. Now is the time for more flexible deterrent capability, not less. New START is riddled with U.S. concessions from which I can see little gain. U.S. leadership in this arena will be measured by how well we protect our ability to defend ourselves and our friends, not by how quickly we agree to an imperfect treaty. Madam President, I yield the floor.